each one of them. If you're in the room today, please come to the stage as I call out your names. Abhishek Jain, Gunjan Junjanwala, Vase Khalid, Aditya Malhotra, Nicole Almeida, Aryan Bajpai, Spandan Biswas, Astha Chandra, Kartike Chaturvedi, Parineet Kaur Chaudhary, Pallavi Das, Saiba Gupta, Nikita Jagdish, Aishwarya Jain, Rishabh Jain, Ayush Kumar Jha, Aishwarya Joshi, Viraj Joshi, Apurv Khandelwal, Krishna Khanna, Clark Kovacs, Karan Kothadia, Strishti Mishra, Shruti Nambyar, Ribhav Pal, Kavya, Narendra S., Radhika Singhal, Ridham Sehgal, Soham Shah, Anya Singh, Arushi Singhal, Aditya Swarankar, Banashri Thapa, Akanksha Tyagi, Swati Urakula, Shriya Vadvan, and Dana Zain. Sir, please join us on stage, and please requesting all the authors to also come on stage. With that, the report is now live, and you may scan the QR codes on the postcards placed at each table to access the report. Thank you. Shri Amitabh Kant, it is our honor to have you with us today. I request that you grace the stage to deliver the special address.
All the distinguished participants in today's session, let me first congratulate CEEW and all the 38 authors who have contributed so significantly in producing this wonderful report on building a green economy for Viksit Bharat and bringing green economy center stage as far as the discussion on the road to 2047 is concerned. We are a $4 trillion economy. The Prime Minister's vision is that by the time we become 100 in 2047, we should be a fully developed economy, which means taking India from a 4 trillion to a 30 plus trillion dollar economy. This means that your GDP has to grow 9 times, your per capita income has to grow 8 times, your manufacturing has to grow 16 times. Even if you become a 30 plus trillion dollar economy or a fully developed economy, your per capita income has been raised, everybody is above the poverty line. But the quality of life can be adversely impacted if we do not go green. And the challenge is that when countries like America were growing and expanding, they created an economy which was built around fossil fuel. So, their car companies bought over the railway companies, destroyed them, and the aim was that cars should be sold in the American economy, the fossil fuel cars should be sold. So the American model was build city for cars and not for people. So cities were not built for cycling, for walking, for the design of the cities was not for cycling, for walking, for public transportation, but it was for selling fossil fuel cars. When India starts its long journey and 50% of India is still to be built, we will see 500 million people getting into the process of urbanization in the next 5 decades. We'll be building 2 Americas, we'll be building a Chicago every 5 years. When you do this, you cannot replicate the model of the Western world. You have to do development in a green manner, and therefore the very design of urbanization, the very design of your growth process, as was so eloquently put by Aditya Malhotra in his presentation, has to be based around circular economy. It has to be based around bioeconomy, and what the Prime Minister has said is that there has to be a behavioral change so that we all are able to embrace a green economy. If our CO2 consumption, our greenhouse gas emission is actually 1/10 that of the United States. Yet India took upon itself the challenge that India must be the first country in the world to try and industrialize and urbanize through a process of decarbonization. Much like we have progressed very significantly in the world of technology through the digital public infrastructure, we technologically leapfrogged. As the Bank of International Settlements said, that we were able to provide digital identity to 1.4 billion Indians. We were able to create bank accounts for all Indians between 2015 and 2017. We opened 550 million bank accounts. We linked them up with Aadhaar and mobile number. And then we started doing fast payments, we do credit, we do insurance, we do stock market transaction, all on mobile. So the Bank of International Settlements said that what India achieved in 7 years through digital public infrastructure would have taken India 50 years to achieve. What we did in 7 years would have taken India 50 years to achieve. You need to replicate that story of technological leapfrogging and technological transformation, what India did by pole vaulting in technology, exactly the same story in the field of green economy. If India does not do this, India may survive, but we as human beings will not survive. There will be erratic rains, there will be floods, the air quality we've all seen. The impact on the lives of human beings will be enormous. And as the report points out, that this is an economy which will create jobs. So if India wants growth with jobs, it will create 48 million jobs. It's an opportunity to create jobs. It's an opportunity of $4 trillion investments. It's an opportunity for $1.4 trillion market. And this is an opportunity which needs to be tapped. It's a market economy. The world will move towards that. And when the world moves towards that, India should be ahead of the curve. And India has demonstrated this in several areas. When we bought over 500 million LED bulbs, we were able to bring down the price of LED bulb to 15% of what the original price was. India is the only country which has been able to do 256 gigawatt of renewable energy. The price when we started with solar energy was 24 rupees. We've been able to bring it down to about 2 rupees. Now we are issuing out tenders for wind, solar, storage, and our prices are amongst the lowest in the world. What is India's aim? India's aim is that we are climatically blessed. No other country has the climatic conditions which India has. India should be able to use the climatic condition to produce renewable energy in India at the lowest cost in the world, crack water, produce green hydrogen in its liquid form ammonia, and become the cheapest producer of green hydrogen in the world. We should be able to decarbonize steel, decarbonize fertilizer, decarbonize cement, all through the green hydrogen process, and become the cheapest producer of green hydrogen. Today the cost of green hydrogen is $4.5 per kilogram. We should be able to bring it down to $1 per kilogram by 2030 and export ammonia in its liquid form, be the cheapest producer of electrolyzer. That is what India's ambition is through the green hydrogen mission. When India has this ambition, it will throw up a lot of economic activity, it will throw up a lot of entrepreneurship. That's the aim. But if you look at the circular economy will throw up massive opportunities. Huge opportunities. And we are already seeing, as was demonstrated in the film and in the presentation, that there are a number of young entrepreneurs who are doing path-breaking work. I've come across several startups, Loham, Chakra, all these are doing path-breaking work in the field of circular economy. And circular economy by design, that means what you produce becomes an input into some other process of manufacturing. And therefore, you need innovation, you need R&D, you need young startups to create markets for that. And you need backward-forward linkages for all this. And therefore, you need this can never be done by established companies. This needs young minds, this needs young startups, this needs a different level of energy, this needs great amount of innovation. And only some of you sitting in this room will be able to provide that innovative spirit and that enterprising spirit and that dynamism to be able to disrupt and to do green work. And all of us in the government, we worked around 12 different sectors to create circular economy models so that the Ministry of Environment can work towards extended producers' responsibility, that the producers must be responsible to ensure circular economy. And therefore my view is that the circular economy and the bio and the nature-based economy which was talked about provides huge opportunities for jobs. And all of you have to play a critical and significant role. But more important than anything else is the belief in India that India can drive a green-based economy and that while the rest of the world is still talking about fossil fuel, India can take an alternative approach to transform the lives of its citizens through a green-based economy for a Viksit Bharat. And bringing the discourse of Viksit Bharat not based on fossil fuel but on a green economy is central to our debate and discussion. That India's path of growth will be different from the Western world, it will be different from what America and Europe has done, and that it will be driven by a green economy. And that vision is spelled out in this report of green economy for a Viksit Bharat. And therefore, I'm particularly delighted that this young team of 38 writers, rarely have I seen in my life a report written by 38 authors. I've never seen 38 people getting together. And therefore, this shows that the young team at CEEW is committed, it is progressive, it is very dynamic, very vibrant, and has committed itself to a green economy. They all got together to write. And I would also like to compliment Aditya Malhotra for his wonderful presentation made today. And all this demonstrates the energy which CEEW has brought forward, and this bring a discourse towards green economy for a Viksit Bharat. All of you will debate, discuss, bring out specific case studies through the day, and in the evening there'll be some champions who will drive this further, and I look forward to that detailed interaction in the evening. I take this opportunity to compliment all of you who've joined this unique endeavor, this great movement, and I would like to compliment all of you, particularly the authors of CEEW, for this path-breaking report of building a green economy for Viksit Bharat. I wish you all the best and a great debate and discussion during the course of the day. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you so much, sir. I'm sure everyone in the room has been inspired by your power-packed address. We will now move on to a special conversation that will tackle the big question shaping India's next decade: why must India invest in a green economy? For this segment, it is my pleasure to introduce Shri Jayant Sinha and Mr. Abhishek Jain. Though Mr. Sinha was not available today due to difference in time zones to be with us, but he was in a virtual conversation with Mr. Jain last evening, and today we'll play a snippet of the conversation for you. But before that, I'd like to introduce them. Shri Jayant Sinha currently serves as the president of Eversource Capital, where he leads India's largest sustainable infrastructure fund and pioneers innovative approaches to mobilizing large-scale capital. A globally reputed policymaker and thought leader, Mr. Sinha has served as India's Minister of State for Finance and Civil Aviation, where he drove landmark initiatives including the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code, the National Investment and Infrastructure Fund, and the Udan Regional Connectivity Scheme. And now, to introduce Mr. Jain. Mr. Abhishek Jain is the Director for Green Economy and Impact Innovations at CEEW and the architect behind the Council's Green Economy program. He has built and leads some of CEEW's most forward-looking work streams, spanning sustainable livelihoods, food systems, tech and AI, and energy access. Mr. Jain also directs Powering Livelihoods, a flagship initiative transforming rural economies with clean energy solutions. His work has shaped several national policies and missions, and his vision continues to guide CEEW's ambition to help make India one of the world's largest green economies. Can we please play the video?
Mr. Sinha, it gives me great pleasure to have you with us. And just to begin the conversation, really at that broadest level, why do you believe that India needs to pursue a green economic pathway? Why do you think it is really important for India? And especially this green, which is energy transition, but also a circular economy, also a bioeconomy. Would love to hear your thoughts.
Thank you very much for having me, and apologies for not being there in person. I wish I could be there with all of you to continue to push the cause of a green economy and of sustainable development, but unfortunately I could not make it. For many years, I've been advocating that net zero is net positive for India. That is, if we pursue a trajectory which is a sustainable development trajectory, that if we bend the curve on carbon emissions in this decade and move towards, as the Honorable Prime Minister has reiterated again and again, net zero by 2070, the impact on it on the Indian economy will be very, very positive. And it will be positive in 4 different ways. Number one, it will drive the creation of millions and millions of green jobs. Number 2, GDP growth will become much, much faster. Number 3, we will clean up our air and deal with all of the public health consequences of the air pollution from petrol and diesel and other fossil fuels, including, of course, coal. And then finally, it will enhance our national security because we will be utilizing energy sources that are domestic energy sources, not imported energy sources. And finally, I will also add another aspect, which is the adaptation aspect to this. For that also, we are going to have to invest.
What is you as an investor looking into when you're looking at green investments? How do we build that confidence in this investment community, especially in India, towards the green investments?
The real trick to sustainable development is ensuring that we generate sufficiently competitive returns for these green companies as they scale up or even as they switch from fossil fuels to electric alternatives. Philanthropic investors, impact investors, the government can seed some of these businesses, can put some money into these businesses. But for the trillions and trillions of dollars of capital that are required, even for the Indian economy, towards being able to pursue sustainable development, we are going to have to make sure that these green investments are in fact very, very attractive from a financial point of view. That's just the way market economies work. And there is ample capital available in the world, trillions and trillions of dollars of investable capital. But to be able to attract it, we have to show over and over again that we can generate sufficiently high net dollar returns, because that's what the investment world looks at, to be able to attract that investment. So this whole conversation of net zero is net positive, green economy, let's go and do sustainable development. Everything, Abhishek, is contingent on generating competitive returns, both for debt providers, which is the banks and other commercial debt and bond investors, or alternatively for equity investors of all types, whether they are venture capital investors, whether they're private equity growth investors, or whether they're infrastructure investors.
If I were to ask you a question around one of the previous hat that you wore as the former Union Minister of Finance, and looking at how government can play a role in this. I mean, clearly, green economy cannot be an agenda for one ministry to pursue. It seems like many ministries have to come and play a role, whether it is for the SMEs, whether it is for the large industries, whether it is for even FPOs think of new business models on bioeconomy and so on. If you were to share any suggestions on how can this really be a whole of a government approach?
Sustainable development requires the whole of government approach, as you correctly pointed out. And I have argued that India needs to follow a development model, which is a green frontier development model. Now, pursuing a green frontier development model requires a whole of government approach, as you're correctly pointing out. And that means that we not only have to have different ministries involved, we have to have local governments involved, because, for example, if we want electric buses, the municipalities have to get involved. And we need to get, very importantly, the state governments involved to be able to pursue a whole of government approach for sustainable green frontier development. Now, as I said, government has a very important role to play to ensure that investors can secure the returns they need from a fiduciary perspective to make these very large-scale investments. And the role of government is threefold when it comes to getting these investments to happen. Number one, there has to be policy stability in the green sector. So framework has to be put in place, and then that enables people to invest. A very good example of that is SECI, which has provided payment guarantees for solar, and we've got a fabulous and fantastic growth of our utility scale solar as a result of that. So number one is policy stability. Number two, we need to make sure that some of the key bottlenecks that come in the way of investment are resolved. This is where state and local governments become very important. And here, the most important one is land. And then number three, we have to provide blended finance instruments. And this set of blended finance instruments includes currency protection. So for dollar investors, It includes climate insurance, it needs credit guarantees of various kinds. So these are the kinds of blended finance instruments that again can be provided at different levels of government. Again, as I said, government has to provide policy stability, it has to address key bottlenecks that often drive up problems and delays, etc. And number three, blended finance. These are the three requirements for government to be able to unlock green frontier development.
Thank you, Mr. Sinha, and thank you for packing so many insights in such a small time frame. I'm really grateful for all these interesting insights.
Thank you very much for having me.
Though we would have loved to have Shri Sinha in the room today, but we would like to extend our gratitude virtually to him for engaging in this thought-provoking dialogue with Mr. Jain. We now move into our first panel of the day, a conversation on what industrial leadership must look like for a green economy. India's major industries will determine how fast and how far our green economy grows. This panel will unpack how green opportunities can be embedded into industrial strategy, not as a box-ticking exercise, but as a driver of resilience, competitiveness, future-ready growth. This session will be moderated by our very own Mr. Abhishek Jain. Joining him on the panel are Mrs. Madhulika Sharma, who is the Vice President and Chief Sustainability Officer at ITC Limited, with over 32 years of experience across Tata Steel and ITC. She is passionate about integrating sustainability into all aspects of business, with expertise in climate change mitigation, supply chain sustainability, product stewardship, diversity and inclusion, and digital solutions for sustainability. Recognized among Asia's top 25 sustainability superwomen by CSR Works in 2019, she serves on the Confederation of Indian Industry and the Federation of Indian Chamber of Commerce and Industry's National Committees on Climate and Environment. And now, to introduce Mr. Chaco Thomas, our second panelist. Mr. Chaco Thomas is the Group Chief Sustainability Officer at Tata Sons. He has over 3 decades of experience in business transformation, sustainable operations, and building high-performing teams across India and Vietnam. Mr. Thomas has been steering the conglomerate's sustainability vision and leading its flagship initiative, Alingana, in collaboration with leadership across all Tata companies. I now invite the moderator and panelists to kindly take the stage. Over to you, Mr. Jain.
Great. Thanks, Urva. A very good morning to all of you. Thank you for being here with us. We thought the way to set up this day is to really have diverse conversations and diverse perspectives come in. And why not to start with industry, which in a way I thought Mr. Kant almost gave us a challenge, that saying that all these new things will not happen through the established industry. Right? So let's take on that challenge in this panel and see how can we take that challenge and make it an opportunity for the established industry as well. I'm really honored and privileged to have both Mr. Chaco and Ms. Sharma joining us today here with us, representing 2 fairly large business houses in India, corporate houses in India. They don't need any introductions. And the reason to have both of you was also the diversity that you both bring through the business groups, right? From the hotels where we are sitting in, to the packaging, to steel, to whatnot. There is a huge diversity that you both bring to the table. And that's what green economy is about. It will touch almost every sector of the economy, right? So let me start with really a broad framing here, which is, and maybe even clarify that this is not a conversation around the CSR. This is not a conversation around ESG reporting. This is about the real bottom line of the business. And how do we look at that bottom line getting diversified into green? How do we look at safeguarding that bottom line as we move into the future with more and more climate risk. So it's really about the hard businesses, right? And when you as the sustainability head of the businesses and the group overall really look at what are the opportunities where we diversify in green, what kind of things are you looking into? What are the things you are already investing into? And what is the internal business case being made when it comes to this? So maybe if we start with you, Mr. Chako.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I think to set, and I'm very glad that the challenge was actually, given, and rather conversation piece that started off without actually including the larger conglomerates. Primarily, maybe there's a belief that business comes with certain responsibilities, and some of it is unsaid. Okay. So I think we're very clear. There is a climate imperative. There are stakeholder expectations, and there is one thing which we really don't talk about much, which is in business, a large number of conglomerates actually do believe in the concept of doing good. It can be, since I come from Bombay, it can be filmy in certain ways, but it actually is a way of business in most conglomerates. So if businesses were not ready to diversify portfolios, they were, and also try to become a little bit more people who are actually bringing in industrial and and even societal change, this entire thing won't really work. Now, I'm actually going to talk about 2 or 3 examples from the group, and then we can move on to some of the other questions that you had. So I want to talk about Tata Power as one of the cases, and the felt need of actually moving away from fossil fuel produced electricity to renewable. Not very many people know about it, but by 2035 we hope to have 70% of our entire portfolio through renewable energy. And this is not on account of just pure doing good, but it's also, like Mr. Kant pointed out, and I think there are several presentations that from 24 rupees, now you have electricity being produced at 2 rupees. But the fact of the matter is, this can be done, this will be done by conglomerates only if there is a business case for it. And the business case here is that there is a government induced policy that helps you actually move towards it. Now, is this prevalent in all industries? No. There's another case that I would like to talk about is Tata Motors. The fact that when I talk about Tata Motors, I'm talking at this point in time both about commercial and passenger vehicles, right? And the fact that passenger vehicles we now are moving very steadily towards electrification, not here in India, but also elsewhere. So, cutting to the actual fact of the matter, a lot of work being done, but it's being done primarily because there is policy that allows you. And large part of it actually happens, if you were also to see in the presentation, large part of it actually happens in decarbonization. The circular economies and the nature-based solutions is something that we really miss out on. So I'll leave it at that, and then I'll request Madhurika to actually give some more concrete.
Thanks. As Mr. Chako mentioned, I think while it was said that yes, it is for larger organizations like say a Tata or an ITC, both more than 100 years old, I think the agility to move on some of the things, because we are so caught on the day-to-day things, probably focusing on growth of the products that we already have, or even transitioning. But what I will underscore is that transitioning to a much greener option in the product lines that you are there. I think, most of the large organizations are fairly committed to it. And like I've worked in Tata's for close to 29 years. Now I'm working in ITC. So I think both of these have been pioneers in sustainability, in CSR, much before the buzzword was there. So Tata Steel was the first one to do a sustainability reporting in 2000, and ITC was the second one. So I have the opportunity to work for both. But reporting is an aspect only if you're doing something, then only you can report. But the point that I would like to make is that, and I'll use a study by Bain in 2023 that says that globally, and this was a global survey done, that globally, more than 60% of the consumers, they actually want to buy more sustainable products. And that number is higher in India. Actually, it is close to 70% who feel very strongly about sustainability. But there are, challenges in terms of, there's a definite gap between intent and action. So there's a say-do gap. And that gap is primarily because, one, there's an ambiguity. And while he made points on, B2B sectors, whether it is power or mobility, I would like to bring in that I'm talking about a B2C and an FMCG and all of us, what we consume on a daily basis. I think the challenge is that there's a say-do gap, there's an intent but does not translate into actual buy. And that is coming from few things like, there's no clear-cut definition of what you call as green, right? So then, consumers really don't know what is green, and the other is the price point and the value that you see at that price point. And I'll give you an example that, an organic atta, Ashirwad atta, 1 kg, a normal atta will cost you about, say, between 50 to 60 rupees based on whether it's sharbati or not. But an organic atta with a traceability to the farm from where it is coming from, and packaged in a, more than 50% paper-based packaging, comes at about, close to 100 rupees per kg. Now, there's a price differential of about 40 rupees per kg. And this is something that you consume, and then nobody is actually seeing that you have consumed a 100 rupee atta versus a 60 rupee atta. But if you're driving an EV vehicle, there's a statement, there's a social acceptance that you're getting that I'm driving an EV vehicle. Or even if you're wearing a Nike shoe which is saying it's coming from a circular, thing, and there's a logo. So these are statements that you carry. And that is why there's a shift in these, whether it's a textile or even, energy and mobility is purely because of cost competitiveness and the more sustainable options which are there. But I think on the consumer products, there's a value which consumer has to see in terms of, if I'm consuming it, at what value am I getting? So there are two, I think, and that preference, while I think there's a gradual move towards, say, and again, the study said that what do Indian consumers value. One is, while most of the Western developed economy would say largely environmental impact, so they would look at a full life cycle assessment, etc. But in India, it is because probably it's our DNA to opt for more natural products, nature-based products. So whether it's, I think the organic movement is really catching traction, and there's a lot of products which say is organic. The other is on packaging. So there's a huge awareness in the Indian consumers on packaging, and they would really want to move to much sustainable, thing. But I think the challenge is on the price point and the value that they see, and really on how does it become, how does it become a statement, and how do people know that I really am consuming? Because organic atta traceable to the farm and a sharbati atta, really there's no change in the taste, right? it will taste the same, but it is only an option that you're making. I think, so with this, I think what needs to be done, maybe that's your second question, but I think this, I'll just leave it because all of us consume these products on a day-to-day basis. And that is why, in large organizations, FMCG organizations like us, probably you see the change happening at a much slower pace, while the change would be happening at a much faster rate on a mobility or on a power kind of a thing.
Yeah. No, let me build on like some of the things that you said, which is that in general, the largeness do reduce agility, right? The innovation speed and so on. And then we see the disruptors coming in the space, right? Like for every ITC, FMCG business, there is a slurp farm out there, there is a organic mantra out there and so on, right? And of course, some of them eventually can even get acquired by the large businesses, become part of the large businesses. But there are these disruptors who are coming in, who are seeing this early trend. I mean, protein disruption, the way it has happened in the country in the last 2 years, right? So whether it is the health drivers, whether it is the others, whether it is the well-being, disruptions are happening and we are seeing new actors emerging. And I'm going to go a little bit out of the script and syllabus here, which is to also then understand like what a role that you see as large corporates to play in spurring, to support some of that disruption early on. Instead of waiting and watching once it becomes big enough for us to acquire, what is it that large businesses can do to enable that disruption? To the extent it can happen in-house, through in-house R&D, innovation, great. But what is it that we can do outside? Because the case today is about really, can I add a new revenue stream by going green? It is not about where am I, oh, this is going to hurt me. Or can I safeguard my future revenue by making my supply chains more resilient? And we all are exposed to a lot of challenges in the supply chain as the climate becomes worse and worse. So both for adding revenue today and securing revenue of the future, how do you see the role of innovation, whether it is in-house or to spur it outside as we go towards more sustainability? Maybe, yeah.
So I'll just go back to, so I have spent a fair, decent amount of time in business. I mean, my last role before this was leading a company, and that was a coffee company. So I'll just take an example from there. And it's an agricultural produce, obviously impacted by climate change, and what used to be normal in terms of rainfall that used to happen like clockwork 20 years back, no longer the case, right? What we actually realized at that point in time was that if we were to continue to stay with the existing seed stock that we have, which has been habituated to a certain way of growing, 20 years down the line we would be extinct. There's a study which says 50% of India's tea areas would be extinct because of climate change and the fact that it's warming up. So the idea was to develop climate resistant, that is basically drought resistant varieties of tea and coffee 20 years in advance to what we and we see the changes because of that. The fact that coffee now has bounced back in India is largely on account of some of these. It doesn't stay. The bigger part of the entire thing is that it cannot stay as something that is closely guarded by a corporate who develops that, but that needs actually to be given out to the society and the other planters. And the reason is, again, couched in economics and the fact that there is a larger good that you do. The economy part of it is largely because today it is a fact that a small grower would produce coffee which would be at least 30 to 40% cheaper than what a large conglomerate would be able to do. And you need to partner with them. And you would be able to partner with them only if you were to actually give out these things. So these are examples of understanding that there could be issues down 20 years down the line, and you need to constantly be ahead of the curve. And this can only happen if you have innovation, if you have a lot of money that you actually pump into your research and development. And I think that's a matter of belief and a matter of commitment to stay the course. So, yeah.
So yeah, I mean, again, a notion to break that large organizations do not innovate, they only keep doing the run-of-the-mill things. That's not so. As, he made an example, I think multiple examples in ITC fold. I'd just like to say that, we have a big play in the paper and pulp sector. So about 30 years ago, and that's also when India was, deeply on the stress on the forex side. At that point of time, close to 100% of the pulp for this division was being imported. And there was a huge, R&D, about, close to 7-8 years of R&D to actually create clones of some of the, forest, thing, or eucalyptus or casuarina, which would be amenable to the Indian climate, and also they would grow fast and they could be rotated frequently. And what has resulted is now we have, close to 1.5 million acres of farm forestry. And what it has helped is it now our, imports, it is now about 20%. Close to 80% comes from homegrown farm products. And it has also augmented the livelihoods of the people, because these were mostly degraded land in the areas, very, very backward areas of Telangana and Chhattisgarh, and they are now, green lands, so to say. So this is just one example, but I'm saying that while visibly probably you don't see so much of innovation coming from large organizations, but yes, it needs to have you also need to have that, apart from pumping in resources or pumping in money for that kind of R&D, you also need to have a culture which promotes, that kind of innovation. So just to give you an example, like we have just, in last 1 month, we added this, our own internal Shark Tank kind of pitch perfect, and in just about 15-20 days, we had close to 150 entries across divisions, and we have shortlisted 15 entries. We'll be having the pictures next week. But the ideas are like fabulous, large part of it on bioeconomy, because ITC has a huge, connect with the agri, but a lot of it on circular economy. So I think also as a country, while I think we talk a lot on green economy and we pivot more on mobility, more on power, hydrogen, but I think what will create a larger impact and create much more livelihoods across the country are, one is bioeconomy, but then, and also the second one is circular economy. I think on circular economy, we are at the fringe, we are at a very, just at a, tip of the iceberg. There's a whole lot of value to be unlocked. But again, I'll go back to what are the enablers. You need standards. I think even for investors and for consumers. So how is an investor going to say that, yes, this is a green product? So you need and these are some of the new things, so you will not have a precedence. You don't have an earlier product to compare against. These are totally new sectors, new type of product offerings, and I think you need standards to say what do you call as green. So I think there's a lot, apart from, policies of incentivization, etc. I think there's a lot of standards which needs to be developed in the India to really enable this whole transformation on green economy, especially on bioeconomy and circular economy. And that will in turn, I think also, and then the consumer awareness part. So that will actually create investments and create a lot of consumer awareness. So
yeah.
I'll leave it.
No, that reminds me of an initiative. I think when you talked about standards, often we either look up to the government to come up with the standards, or sometimes civil society takes it forward and creates a standard and so on. But I think there are now interesting examples emerging where industry is actually coming forward and creating standards for itself. I think Tata Group would be a lot more familiar with this, the trustee standard, which was brought in for tea. So it was actually multiple T companies coming together and saying, okay, this is the standard we need to follow when it comes to sustainability, when it comes to social inclusion, and so on, right? So I think this is also, and I'm hoping the entire day would not be about, okay, this is what government can do, this is what government should do, but really what all in our own right, each one of us can do. And I think industry itself can now start coming forward to create standards which can be socialized, which can be then maybe taken up by the government, but why not we become the first mover, right? And maybe just to end on one note, we are also a little bit short on time. I think what you mentioned about how we solved the imported pulp problem with the local generation of biomass for it. That was maybe 50 years ago now, in 2070s, as you said. As we are learning more and more, as we are knowing more and more about the nature, some of those models also need to evolve, like from monocroppings to multi-croppings, how do we go there and so on. But I think also what can we learn from the past for the future, and a beautiful example comes to my mind from now Tata Group company, Big Basket, where recently the CEO mentioned that 25% of their disposable sales, like one-time disposable cutleries and all, is now coming from sal leaf based disposables, right? Sal leaves have been used as disposable for years and years, as in, I think maybe centuries. But now to fit it into the modern context, they have upgraded it, made it firm, and so on. And it is becoming a quarter of the disposable sales at Big Basket, right? Those are the stories we need to champion. Those are stories we need to scale. With that, let me thank you both for joining us and sharing very important insights. And let me hand back over to Urva.
Thank you, Abhishek. Thank you to our panelists for that compelling discussion. It's clear that India's green transition will be shaped by bold industry leadership and a strong demand signal for sustainable products. I would request you to please stay back for a group photograph. We will now break for tea and reconvene in 15-20 minutes by 12:15. As you move out, I urge everyone to please visit the exhibition that is put together outside while you network and have your tea. Thank you so much. I hope you all enjoyed your tea and were able to visit the exhibition outside. Up next is our first lightning talk of the day, Foolishly Brave, building India's first plant-based premium brand. Please join me in welcoming Ms. Arundhati Kumar to share her journey of turning bold ideas into a pioneering sustainable brand in India. Ms. Arundhati Kumar is an award-winning entrepreneur and climate activist with extensive experience in building conscious brands, consumer experiences, and compelling narratives. Her passion for sustainability and the role of individual consumption patterns on climate change led her to establish Studio Beej, India's first plant-based premium accessories brand in 2019. A well-known name in the biomaterial space, having worked with and advised multiple biomaterial startups in India, she is now building Clima Collective, India's first certified plant sampling and end-to-end manufacturing for conscious brands and corporate houses. Manufacturing facility. She also runs Reverse the Stripes, a niche climate and sustainability consulting practice that supports businesses on climate communications, storytelling, and sustainable events. Her work has received national and international recognition, including the LA Eco Innovation Award 2024 and the Her Circle Disruptor of the Year Editor's Choice Award 2024. Over to you, Ms. Kumar.
Is the slides going to come? The slides? Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Sorry, I have a really bad throat and Delhi's pollution is not helping. But I'm going to take the next 10 minutes to talk about this journey that I started in 2019 of building a plant-based accessories brand when it was really not a conversation in India and also very emerging conversation globally. And that's when I decided that I gave myself the name Foolishly Brave because I didn't know if it was a very foolish thing to do or a brave thing to do. And I said, we will figure out in time. I think it lands somewhere in between. So my journey actually started with no market research, no big, study. It actually started with a Google search and a rejection. So I had spent about 20 years in HR. I wanted to, work in the climate space. And my family business is into leather exports. So I started thinking, is there a way that I can combine my climate activism and the business my parents do? And I started with a Google search. You'll see it right there, sustainable alternatives to leather. And I tell you, in 2019, so many options were not coming up. This is a recent Google search that I put up there. And I threw up all these materials that I had not heard of. At that time, there was Pinatex made out of pineapple, there was cork, there was, early research happening into mycelium, into rubber. And I'm like, oh my God, why is this not in India? And I want to bring it to India. And I got very excited. I went to my father and I said, hey, you know what? You want me to take over the business? He was about 75 then. I said, I have an idea, let's go plant-based. And he said, listen, not happening. I built my business over 5 decades, makes a lot of money, is profitable. Time, been in human resources, and a basic, a very entire background has been in human resources, and a basic, a very basic understanding of what plant-based and sustainability meant then. Because 6-7 years ago, there wasn't even much information there to read and learn from. My only North Star was that we are going to be absolutely anal about the material. So I used to read up the technical specs of all material. How much of it is bio-based, what makes it plant-based, what is the circularity of it, what do you do with the afterlife of it. So everything I actually learned on the job. And the whole idea that the product needs to be very high in quality. So if you've looked at the exhibit outside, some of those materials, all those materials have been made by Beej, but the material innovation, I have to say, is entirely done in India. When you see the materials outside, you will see they're made out of banana stem fiber, out of mushrooms, and out of eucalyptus leather, and this research has been developed and done entirely in India by Indian innovators. And what I didn't realize then is we were not just building a D2C brand, what we were building was a category in India. Plant-based accessories is today a very emerging category in India. There are a lot of brands like Allen Solly, Fossil, etc. Getting into this space because now consumers are realizing what they for the longest time thought was vegan and good actually was plastic. 6 years back, the understanding of this used to be very, very minimal. So some of our first shots and early designs, I put them up here. We started the website in Jan 2020, and in March 2020 was the first lockdown. Something I had not